Welcome, everyone, to the People Leaders podcast. I'm flying solo today. However, I'm really excited about introducing our guest, Lauren. And Lauren Patel is a former Boston Consulting Group consultant and now has turned industry leader. She's the founder and CEO of Keenan, Reid Strategies, who have helped more than 100 plus business leaders develop strategies and activate solutions for their most ambiguous problems. And that's a definite issue that I have seen in the industry is dealing with these, the ambiguities of, issues that businesses are moving through. They also have a unique fractional model, which we're going to get into, that provides on-demand access to key consultants with deep strategic capabilities. And this is where consultants work side by side with leaders in their teams. And I am going to bring Lauren on straight away and tell us about this thing called fractionalization.
Yes, I love it. Hi, Jan. Thanks for having me on so much. Yeah, fractionalization. Let's get right into it. It's kind of something we stumbled into. Let me start there. I didn't set out as a founder to discover this and build this way of working. It came to us when we discovered what was successful with our clients. And by fractionalization, what we mean are industry leaders, experts, executives, people in that kind of mid-career to later career phase who have done great work and bring a serious amount of expertise. And what they do is they work with a part of their time. Some of them work part-time professionally and part-time doing other things. Others spend a part of their capacity with one client or two clients, or sometimes even three clients, and they spread it across depending on what the need is. And then it does a couple of really great things, I think, both for the professionals, or we call them the consultants, as well as for the clients. First, for the consultants, it's obviously great work-life balance and flexibility. You can work as much as or as little as you'd care to fill. I can speak to several people who have done this while they're the primary caregiver for a parent or for a child, or while they're incubating their own business or buying multiple businesses or preparing for triathlons or doing whatever it is in life that they enjoy doing. And then there's others who are making a great living doing this across multiple clients at the same time. So it's a really great model for the professional. On the client side, I think it's a deal. Like, it's just a great value. So you're typically bringing in someone who has, that kind of senior amount of expertise, either as like a senior IC or sometimes even executive. And you're really only paying for what you need. So you're bringing in this high skill set and you're being very targeted about how do you apply it. And you're bringing it in a way that's flexible to your business. So it can come in, it can go out, it can come in again, it could stay forever, it can do whatever you need. But you're really only spending the budget that you need to spend to solve a particular issue.
I can see that across so many different functions around procurement, HR, tech. So I'm really excited for people who are actually moving through their, like as you said, senior career and thinking, what else? What else is possible for me? Like, if I've been in a particular industry, is this an opportunity for me to actually branch out into other industries? So do you
Yeah.
find that, or do people stick within industries?
No, it's interesting. We do find it. In some industries, it is very helpful to have that background. So I think there's some industries that are quite unique. In the US, healthcare is certainly a unique industry. I think it'd be very difficult to come into healthcare without healthcare experience earlier in your career. But aside from just a few examples, I think it's more about bringing the functional experience and the capabilities. And that you find when you come into a different industry, you can learn the context, but the problems, the underlying reasons are all kind of the same, right? Like, organizational problems are organizational problems. And if you're in tech or if you're in industrial goods, and I've worked in both at the same time, it boils down to what's the problem and who are the people, and working within that space. So I think it's great. We work primarily with enterprise technology clients, but I can tell you I bring in people without tech experience all the time. And they adjust rapidly. And for them, it's fantastic because they're learning something new. That's such a great thing to do at that career stage.
Oh, I think it's a great idea. So tell me a little bit about the impact on Gen Xers and millennials, who are working full time. What is the impact that you're seeing?
Like, do you mean people coming in to be consultants or people that are on the client teams?
So why are companies perhaps, like pushing out Gen Xers and millennial full timers?
Yeah.
And yeah.
So I think, we see with large companies downsizing, they would never say that they're eliminating an age bracket
Of
or a
course.
generation. But
Mm-mm.
what they're doing is eliminating a layer. And that layer is primarily populated with Gen X folks and, the elder millennials. And they've reached a point in their career where there are many of them and not enough spots. And so naturally, those are the folks that are being removed from the organization. Um, it is interesting in that the fractional movement is bringing in people of that same, right? And sometimes it is the same people. But it is a recognition that many of those people have really great capabilities. Some have broad, some have narrow. Um, but there is a kind of natural replacement cycle that's happening there. I
Mm.
think I wouldn't say that today the replacement cycle is even. There are certainly more people being downsized than I think fractional people coming into large companies. Um, but I do see growth in the fractional movement in with startups and mid-sized companies
Mm.
because those companies certainly need and value the expertise and capabilities that those folks and those generations are bringing. So I see a lot of growth there.
Mm.
Um, and anecdotally, I hear of many, many, many people going into those roles.
Oh, absolutely. And startups are the ones that need that agile way of operating. So they've got, specific problems, specific target, and they want it done as opposed to just, like being on the payroll. So it
Right.
really is a good opportunity for executives to rebrand themselves as, like fractional experts. Like there's a
Mhm.
whole new industry, isn't there?
Yeah. Oh, certainly. Yeah, definitely. We see that all the time. And even with folks that aren't working directly with us, there are I can give you a story of a wonderful tech executive who led big sales accounts and with a large tech company, and she is now focused on being a fractional CRO, so fractional chief revenue officer, working with smaller and mid-sized companies. So these
Mm.
are companies that are anywhere between 10 to $100 million in revenue. They cannot afford to have a C-level experienced CRO come in yet, but they have the need for one, particularly with, and again, being targeted, their negotiation and their deal structures. And
Mm.
so her job isn't to act as the key sales contact with their clients. Her job is to layer on top of them and make sure those big deals are being pushed through at an accelerated pace. The deal structures are advantageous for all parties and that the contracts are sound, right? Because that's the expertise she brings.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
So I'm just thinking if someone's listening to this podcast and they're thinking that this is of interest to them, what are some of the first steps for someone to actually start to explore this whole new way of, talent?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. And there are so many people looking. I went with my husband actually. He's a graduate of the Booth School of Business at the University of Chicago, and I went to his 20-year reunion. And I found myself talking to all of his female classmates, and half of them were in, tell me what you do. Tell me about this movement. What should I be doing now? Then the problem statement is, gosh, I know so much but I want to do something fun, but I don't want to do it all the time. And how do I think about this? And so here's what I say. First, I would say, try to tap into a network of other fractional leaders. Like, get to know the people that are doing this already. And there are some great suggestions. I think you can either say, I work in this functional area. So I'm a HR person, I'm a CMO, I'm a CFO. There are existing organizations out there that are very targeted to those functional areas. There are also professional organizations. So there's a organization called Fractionals United, has a WhatsApp group of or they have a, not WhatsApp, a Slack channel. There's 10,000 people in their Slack group, 10,000 fractionals out there. So go find your people and start to network and really understand, if this is for you. The questions I would ask are, how do you find work? Because this works great when it works. But to be honest, it can take a year, 2 years until you feel like you have some solid footing underneath you, and you need to be comfortable with that. Where do I find work? And then what is my job like? What am I actually doing? Like, what are the expectations of my role? When they say, when you hear this term, like a fractional C, X, whatever, people think it's C-level work. And I will be perfectly honest with you, like, it's not chief of anything type of work. It's a mix of a very skilled expert IC plus the ability to lead and manage stakeholders and a political system. Those two things are what this job is. And so you need to be comfortable with the fact that you're going to be doing, like you're going to be doing again. And if you have been leading an organization of 100 people with a layer or two beneath you, you haven't been making the slides. You haven't been necessarily making the calls. You've been making the decisions. And this is going to pull some of that doing back into your job. So I think you need to be comfortable with that. The other questions I would ask myself are around your appetite for financial risk and your need for stability. So when you're first getting started, you should not expect to have 5 clients right out of the gate. My recommendation would be to do 2 things. First, I would tell everyone you know and that you've worked with what you're doing, and I would get on the phone and I would network like crazy. That can never stop, by the way. Like, that is just part of this business. The other thing that I would do is find groups that are trying to staff people. We staff people. We are not the only one. There are hundreds of organizations like ours, some small as we are, some large. So some of the fractional organizations I mentioned before, they also have staffing groups. But then there's also groups like the Business Talent Group, or Catalent I would call it a marketplace. But if you're just getting started, a marketplace is helpful to you, right? They'll give you the reps you need to pitch your work. And it will also expose you to the type of work that's out there. So I would do that. The fourth thing I would do is I would get your mindset right about thinking about yourself as a business. And I think this is one of those things that people forget. They want to go do the work. They can talk to the people. They know they need to sell. But their mindset is, it's me doing this thing, not the business of me doing this thing. So think about the business entity structure you want to set up. I really counsel people, think about the tax implications. Because if you're and where you are in your retirement, stretch. Because if you are a person who is mid to late career and you're thinking about retirement and that's not already there for you, then you should be making different decisions about your retirement and how you structure your inbound cash than those who come into this completely financially secure. And I would say, like, I wouldn't be afraid to do it, but it's actually worked out great for most of the people I know. But if you set yourself up as a business entity, there are some tax advantage ways you could continue to save and take care of yourself for the longer term. So I just mentioned that because I think people neglect that. And I actually feel it's quite important for folks.
That's wonderful. That's great advice, Lauren, because what they're moving into is that hybrid way of operating. So, they are a business and they are still doing the work in the business as well. And I suppose the amount of risk that they have is they don't have to generate every single, project, but they actually have to generate the contacts and the work. So I think it's I don't know, it's just a more easier way to spread the risk if you had a little bit of that entrepreneurial, like gene. So I'm interested, because we talk a lot about leadership and culture. What do you think is the impact of culture when you do have a workplace that has fractionalized, workers or leaders who are leading some programs?
No, this is a great question. And something I think can be done extremely well or extremely poorly. When it's done well, the fractional leader who joins the organization considers themselves a part of the team. They have a servant leader mindset. They have I would call it a client service. We called it client service mindset until last year when people were servant leaders. But in my case, let me just give you a personal example.
Mhm.
One of the reasons I like doing this job is I hate having a boss. I love having a client. I love it. I truly do. Like, and I really, really, really care about their success. I cannot explain why. I just do. And I consider part of my job is I'm a little bit of a butler, like a little bit of my job is making sure that they are taken care of. And that goes for my direct client as well as their team. And so when a fractional or an independent consultant enters an organization, they have to have that mindset and know that their role is to fulfill the capability that they've been brought in to fill, of course. But the other half of that is that their job is to, fill that people piece as well. One of the things I've seen work very, very well is when a senior consultant or a fractional executive is paired on a project with kind of an up and comer. So let's say your 7 to 10 years of experience, high potential person on your team. Those people are often given responsibility as a step up for high priority projects. And here's what happens. You bring senior person with up and comer and they create a power team. And it's so symbiotic because the person who is the actual employee has the relationships in the organization. They have the knowledge of the problem. They have the core capabilities set to work within that organization and within their particular role. What they lack sometimes is the experience of how to manage stakeholders, right? And they lack, especially senior stakeholders, right? Like, how do you go sell your idea to the E-level, the EVP below the CFO? You don't know how to do that. You've never spoken to that person. You're scared of that person. And you often don't have just the reps of structuring an ambiguous project. So you bring in the person that does, and they become odds behind the curtain. And in this project, not only does the project become more successful and faster, they're developing the talent, right? Now you've got this extra mentorship happening. And that dynamic, I find, is really appreciated around the organization and completely negates any cultural issues. It just nips it in the bud. They build intense amount of trust with the clients. And in their interactions with the team, they know how to get the team to work together. So they're helping be that cultural glue that helps bind that group of people together.
I love that. So one of my other questions was, like, how are people, like, are they invested in reporting to someone who is a fractional worker?
Yeah, so this is a good question. There are some, I'd say there are some pitfalls we should all be aware of. I think it's very important to set expectations around how this is going to work and the duration of the engagement. In these situations where you have a direct reporting relationship, it's often for a reason, right? It's different than if you brought in a fractional leader because you had a particular project or capability that was missing and they were effectively going to work as an IC or member of the team. Where there is these direct reporting relationships is because you didn't have this person in place. And I think it's really important for everyone in the organization to have transparency for this is for 6 months. Or we have this person in place indefinitely because we are conducting a search. And that honesty has to be there. And then the person, you need to bring in a person who is capable and willing to manage a team, right? Because not everybody really wants to. I'll raise my hand and say, I don't want to. So, I need to be honest and not take jobs like that. So that's really important. The other pitfall with this is HR, actually. So if you come into an organization and let's say you're not the fractional HR person, HR has lots of rules and regulations about performance management. And they may be a little reticent to really solidify the reporting relationship. In some cases, I've heard that, they're not willing to give access to talent systems, performance management systems. And in some cases, that does have an impact on the person's ability to truly lead a team. So, yeah, transparency and systems, I think, have to be there in order to make that work, and then just bringing in the right person.
Absolutely. You have to be all in. If you want to be part of the organization, you have to be open to all of the organization. It's like when people are doing an acting, position, act as if you are that actual person. Make those decisions and those calls. That's great advice. So the other question that I have is, before you were just talking about, so some people have multiple clients. Now, have you found cases where people are working for competitors, especially if you're in the same industry? Does that ever come up, and is that an issue?
I have never heard of that happening. I would strongly advise against that.
Yeah.
Um, I think often, like, it's not uncommon for the contract to contain language prohibiting that. Now, in the US, if that's allowed or not allowed at this point, like, up for legal debate. I think it's just poor form.
Mm.
Like, I just wouldn't do it. If
Mm.
you wouldn't want to work for Six Flags and Disney at the same time. It's
Yeah.
just, you're asking for a bad client experience. Like,
Mm,
someone's going to
mm,
find out, and
yeah.
then they're going to look poorly on you, and then they're not going to refer you. So it's bad business for you. I would advise doing it. Now, there are situations, let's look at the edge cases. You came from Disney and now you're being hired by Six Flags, right? Well, that happens all the time in industry. So as
Mm.
long as you're not breaking any agreement, I say complete fair game. Don't reveal anything that's confidential, right? Use your judgment. That's totally fair. Um, I think there's another question around this, which is like, should you hold the stock? Um, when you're in a big consulting firm, so when I was at BCG, we had to register what equities we held, and we were prohibited against holding any equities from a client. Now, when you're consulting independently, you do not have anyone looking over your shoulder but
Mm.
you. And in some cases, you are privy to confidential company information that might make you make different decisions. So I would advise just buy an index fund, like, don't hold that particular your client's stock. I think it's kind of a risky area to be in.
Yeah, you want to be open and transparent in all that you do, for sure.
Agreed.
Just, allows your that energy to flow. This has been fascinating. I just love the idea of seeing the way in which we can grow as a in the talent pool, especially like we operate with a lot of senior leaders, and they are still full of energy and vibrancy, and they still want to continue to grow. And I just think what a wonderful opportunity just to kind of dip your toe into it.
Yeah.
And you gave some great advice, like even going on LinkedIn and perhaps reaching out to you. Like, so is that something that would be okay for our listeners if they are interested to reach out to you on LinkedIn? Is that the
Yeah,
best?
of
Yeah.
course, of course. Lauren Wambold Patel. I think I'm the only Lauren Wambold Patel. Yeah, please reach out. I'm happy to share, and we can provide some resources that I've mentioned here about kind of how to triage and direct and where to go.
That's great. So what are you working on at the moment, Lauren, that you're excited about?
Yeah, so we are growing our business. We are small but mighty. We're really excited about bringing on some new clients. We've also launched a newsletter. We launched a newsletter last year, about 9 months ago, really just targeted at independent consultants, sharing the knowledge that we have and how you get started when doing this. It's called the 2x2. It's the 2x2.com, the 2x2.com. If you're a consultant, you get it. We're excited about that. And yeah, we're excited about summer ending here in Austin, Texas. About cooler temps and
Right,
football
okay.
season.
Right. Yay. Always great to look forward to something. So I think that would be a great step for consultants, just to jump onto your newsletter, just to
Yeah.
start to explore those opportunities and understand the movement. So yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be a great next step. And we'll put a link to that in our show notes. Well, thank you so much, Lauren. Is there anything else that you want to finish off with?
No, just a big thank you to you for letting me join you, and what a great conversation.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's all been you. It's fabulous. I just kind of like step back and let people riff. So it's been really enjoyable. Thank you so much. And I'll see you on LinkedIn.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jen.
Okay. Thanks, Lauren. Bye. If you found that video useful, then you'll be sure to find this one useful as well.